Hello and welcome to NTTBF 21 School Day. We are so happy that you're joining us for the Kids Rule the World panel. I am Jill Bellamy. I am the librarian at Highland Park Middle School in Dallas and a member of the NTTBF Steering Committee. And I am so honored to be the moderator of this very esteemed panel. Of course, we wish we could all be together in Irving, Texas, but we are delighted that we can continue to bring the festival to you this year virtually, and we can bring people together from all over the world, and that we can continue to celebrate literacy and books in a new way this year. Now, let's welcome our amazing author panel. First, welcome to debut author Crystal D. Giles. Ms. Giles works in the world of accounting, but after the birth of her son, her love for books and stories was reignited. She started writing and this year released her first middle grade book. Congratulations and welcome. Please tell us about this highly anticipated novel that is already receiving so much praise, Ms. Giles.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. My middle grade debut is called Take Back the Block. This is it. It's a book I love. It's about 11-year-old Wes, and he's on a journey to save his neighborhood from a powerful developer. Wes grew up in Kensington Oaks, and it's a part of his family. And quite honestly, he doesn't want to leave. So he sets out on a journey with his friends to save his neighborhood. And so the book covers things like social justice and community, and there's a lot of really cool, fun friendships and all kinds of friend drama. So I'm happy to be here.
Yay, and congratulations. I'm so glad that your book is out in the world. Welcome next to New York Times bestselling and 3-time Newbery Honor winning Jennifer L. Holm. Ms. Holm started out as a television producer, but now writes historical fiction, science fiction, and also collaborates with her brother Matt on 3 very popular graphic novel series. Welcome, Ms. Holm. Please tell us about your latest release.
So my latest release is called The Lion of Mars, and it is about a boy named Bell who is 11 years old, and he's living on Mars in the year 2091. And he lives in the American settlement underground in a lava tube with a bunch of other kids and some grown-ups. And he's like a normal kid, you know, he's curious, he likes cake, he has a best friend who's a cat, and he wonders why the American settlement doesn't talk to any of the other countries. And so as we find out in the book, something has happened many years ago, and it turns out that it's up to Belle to kind of save the day. So thank you so much for having me. And also, yay, Mars is so exciting right now because we have a new rover on Mars. Go little Percy. Perseverance, but like all the NASA people are calling it Percy, so.
I love it. So timely, so timely, so perfect. Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
Joining us is New York Times bestselling YA and middle grade author Amy Kaufman. Welcome. Ms. Kaufman studied history, literature, law, and conflict resolution and is currently working on a PhD in creative writing. Please tell us, Ms. Kaufman, about your latest collaboration for middle grade readers.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's so excited to be coming to you from Australia. This is my first North Texas Teen Book Festival, so I'm your Aussie contingent. My recent book is The World Between Blinks, which I wrote with my friend Ryan Groudon, and it's about a couple of cousins who stumble from our world into the world where everything lost from our world goes. So we're talking big things from cities and people like explorers and Amelia Earhart, all the way through to like the homework that was definitely in your bag and doesn't seem to be there anymore. So, you know, kind of like going to Narnia, only instead of, you know, fawns and talking animals, you know, you've got a giant mountain made of ballpoint pens, stuff like that. So they have to find their way home, or they are going to end up not just lost, but having lost their memories as well forever.
Thank you. Such a fun concept. So thank you so much. And thanks for being here. Welcome. Next, we have New York Times bestselling author of 3 middle grade series, Mr. James Ponti. Before writing these series, Mr. Ponti was an Emmy-nominated television writer and producer who worked for many networks, including Nickelodeon, the Disney Channel, and PBS. Please tell us about your latest series, Mr. Ponte, the first volume of which was just named to our Texas Lone Star reading list.
Yes, well, that book was City Spies, which we came out the week of last year's North Texas Teen Book Festival. And little did I know that's the last time I'd be on an airplane. You know, I left that week thinking I was going on a big tour. The new book is called City Spies Golden Gate. Here's my advanced copy. This came out, comes out this week. And it is the story of the series is the story of 5 kids from around the world who all kind of fall into the cracks, and they've all been adopted by this spy of the British intelligence, MI6, and he's raising them as a family of spies in northern Scotland. The first book went to Paris. This book goes to San Francisco, and they're trying to track a mole within MI6 and solve a mystery around the death of a British spy. So a lot of fun adventure. And, you know, for me, it's also really fun, these 5 kids forming a family and what that means.
Love it. Thank you and welcome. All right, and welcome Dwayne Reed, America's favorite rapping teacher. You may have seen him when his video, Welcome to the 4th Grade, went viral. Now, Mr. Reed adds middle grade author to his list of accomplishments. Congratulations. Please tell us about your debut novel.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. My name is Mr. Reed. It's nice to meet you all. And Simon Barnes is a kid from the Chi. He wants to be a big rapper, but he's still kind of shy because he's got a big head and he's small for his age. So what's on the outside makes Simon afraid. But what's on the inside, there's something to see because he rhymes in his mind what he wants to be. Gonna change the whole world one day, you'll see, because that's Simon, the notorious D.O.G. Roof, roof. Mic drop. So, and Simon B. Ryman, thank you. Simon B. Ryman is about a book, is a book about Simon Barnes, who is an 11-year-old 5th grader from the west side of Chicago who wants to be a big rapper, bigger than Kanye, bigger than Jay-Z, bigger than Chance the Rapper. But he's afraid to use his voice because he's nervous about having a big head and being really small. But when his new teacher assigns the class an oral presentation on something that impacts their community, Simon's afraid that he won't succeed. But with the help of his neighborhood crew, or should I say the DOG crew, Simon gains some confidence that he needs to prove that, even one kid can make a difference in their community. Mr. Barnes.
Oh. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I was hoping we were going to get a little rapping. I love that it's already happened.
And you mentioned the success of the video, and it's so funny because remember when viral was a good thing? It's like, now virus has such a scary thing, but it was the last good viral with that video. It was so awesome. It was great.
Thank you.
Oh, that's so true. I probably need another word there. That's true. I love it. Okay, so let's start with some questions. And let's actually start, how about with our 2 debut authors, Crystal and Dwayne, because your book shares some very similar themes of community and characters finding their voice. And can you tell us what inspired you to tell these stories of kids taking action in their neighborhoods? And Crystal, how about we'll start with you? And I'm sorry, I kind of have to do the calling on things since everything's kind of tricky with Zoom.
No, that's okay. So Take Back the Block is about Wes, and he actually has a crew of friends. They've lived in the same neighborhood their whole lives. And so the story is directly inspired by my community. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it, like many other cities across the nation, is experiencing gentrification or the displacement of marginalized people. And so Wes, in the beginning of the book, he's quite honestly not all that interested in things happening around him. He has activist parents, but he'd rather be doing kid stuff. So as the story turns, when his neighborhood is threatened, he finally kind of takes interest because he doesn't want to leave his home. And so Wes gathers up his friends and they come up with a plan. I think middle grade is the perfect time to introduce themes of standing up, speaking out, mostly because children are aware of what's going on around them. They're right in the middle of it. And so I think we actually do our children a disservice if we don't include them in matters happening in their community. So I think this story at this age just felt perfect. And with so many young activists out there right now, it just felt like the perfect climate to introduce a character who learns how to use their voice in a powerful way.
Great. Thank you so much. I agree. Dwayne, would you like to go on?
Yeah, absolutely. Jill, can you actually throw that question back my way?
Oh, sure.
I'm so entranced in Crystal's answer.
I wish I could wrap it to you. Okay. Your book shares some similar themes of community and characters finding their voice to make a difference. And can you tell us what inspired you to tell your story of a kid, particularly a kid, Simon, taking action in his neighborhood?
Yeah, I think so. What inspired the story was Simon was like me. So Simon B. Ryman is an ode to my 11-year-old self. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I was once very short and I had a big head. And I was afraid of being bullied all the time, which means that I was afraid to use my voice. So Simon B. Ryman is a letter to 11-year-old Dwayne saying, no, it's okay to use your voice. And Simon, he would rap in his head and he would use raps eventually in person to distract people from paying attention to his head and distract people from paying attention to his height. So that's the inspiration of the story. Yo, you have a voice, you just have to find it. And Simon's just happened to be rhyming. A little more rhymes for you there. But then as far as the impact on their community, a lot of my scholars, I'm a 4th and 5th grade teacher now. A lot of my scholars, we interact with people who are struggling with homelessness and poverty. And on one occasion, we were walking by someone and they were asking for money. And my scholars, they started to poke fun at that individual. So I pulled them to the side. I said, no, 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 no. And we began to talk about what it means and why he might be in a situation like that and how we can do something to change that situation. Okay, you might not be able to change his life completely, but you can smile at this individual. You can look them in the eye. You can say, oh, I'm sorry, or no, thank you. You can still have that civil human engagement. So that's something that I wanted to show in Simon B. Ryman, that even if you're an 11-year-old kid who's afraid to use their voice, you can help those in your community in the way that's specific to you. So that was a little bit of the inspiration.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And again, congratulations to both of you on these novels. And I think our middle grade readers are really going to respond to them. All right, now Jennifer, James, and Amy, your books also kind of have a similar theme in the fact that you all focus on the importance of community and specifically family, or like you said, James, found family, which I love. Please share how you created these bonds in your stories and why this is such an important theme. And Amy, would you be okay with starting?
Yeah, sure. So the two main characters in The World Between Blinks are Jake and Marisol, and they're cousins. And I mean, family is everything for these kids. The way they come together at the start of the story is the whole family is gathering at their nana's house for the very last summer holiday because their nana has just passed away. And the grown-ups in the family are going to have to sell this beach house because, you know, practical grown-up reasons like, oh, it needs a new roof and who will keep it clean. And the kids are heartbroken because, you know, everything that matters to them about their family is here. This is where they come together every year. And they're responding to it in really different ways. You know, Marisol is responding by trying to hold on to everything. You know, she's literally getting little things from around the house and, you know, putting them in her pockets. And Jake is responding by just cutting it all off and saying, okay, it's gone. You know, he's spent his whole life moving around the world and he's so used to losing everything he cares about, you know, the friends he makes at school and the places he lives, that he's just like, all right, I'm great at losing things. I'm gonna lose it all. And, you know, it's a book about kind of the fact that sometimes we need to hold on really tight and sometimes we need to let go. And, you know, we don't all always get it right, even as grown-ups, but we have to work on learning to tell the difference. And, you know, I lost my dad a few years ago and Ryan lost her mum while we were working on this book, which was something that we knew would happen, but it doesn't make it any less terrible. And so we wanted to write a book, you know, about family and the bonds and how you hold on, but, you know, where you hold on and where you let go and how you know which are the special parts that you shouldn't let go of and what's the stuff. Because, you know, I mean, that's still something we think about now. So I think, you know, as we've just been saying, kids are noticing this stuff. It's happening all around them, whether we talk to them about it or not. So let's talk. Let's figure it out together.
Yes, thank you. Yes, very important message for all of us. Okay, Jenny, would you like to go next?
Sure. So I think, I've always been a bit obsessed with family. I think that's a common thread in all of my books. In the case of this book, it's my first sort of stab at writing in science fiction genre for middle grade. And I'm from a big family myself. I'm one of 5 kids. I'm the only girl. And so when I was growing up, my brothers were all reading science fiction, and they were really obsessed with, the rockets and the shiny weapons and the crazy aliens. But I was mostly interested in what would family be like if we were on another planet. And so that's really the theme of my book. Bell is living in the American colony, and he is there with a bunch of other kids. They were all orphans. So they were all brought up from Earth as orphans, and the adults are there. And so they're kind of a created family. They're not like a traditional family. And Bell is super curious about earth animals, right? He loves cats. And so he becomes obsessed with lions, and he learns that on Earth, lions live in prides. And the big fact that he distills from this is that on Earth, when a lion doesn't have a pride, it usually doesn't survive. So he comes to see that having a strong pride, having a good group of people around you is important, not just for your heart, but for your very survival. And that's really the theme of The Lion of Mars.
Oh, great. Thank you. All right, James Ponte.
Well, I think I would be the easiest study in Psych 101 for, I'm now 8 books in, and I don't know how many scripts and TV things. Every story, even when I start out thinking this one's not going to be about it, ultimately becomes about separation of family and coming back. Undoubtedly, I never met my dad. I was raised by my mother. My brothers had a different father who was also not in the picture. So I grew up in this house where we had different last names and different ethnicities, and our brothers were really Irish, and that was the thing. And I was born in Italy, and that was the thing. And which was, but I didn't know for the longest time that our family was different, because my mom just acted like this is our family, this is what we are. And that constantly, but I had all these questions about the parts that I didn't know. And so when I write, I find I keep writing about that. And so that was the Truth in the Dead City series, that was the core story in the Frame series. And so I thought, let's go ahead and embrace it in this series. And so it is all about a family. It is all about a family that is not a family, which is kids from all around. They weren't a traditional family, but they are in every sense of the word one. And that's fun for me to write, but also it's been really great. So I've been doing this now for a little while, and it's an 8th book. And you go on school visits, and so many kids come from divergent backgrounds, same-sex parents, divorced parents, widowed, all these types of things. And the themes, what I think we found that all these stories that we just described, different than when I was growing up, and I think I'm older than everyone here, so I get different when I was growing up. Books for kids now are about real things that face kids. When I was growing up, books were about, Johnny Tremaine and the Sons of Liberty, which had no basis in reality of growing up in Atlantic Beach, Florida, but was fun to read and adventure. But now, we never dealt with community involvement and activism and found this and finding your voice and then I can relate to Dwayne. I was Mr. Potato Head, Mr. Pumpkinhead, Charlie Brown. I was not short. I was the tall kid with the big, so I was like the walking candy apple with the giant head in my school. So I can relate to that too. So it's great that we get to write about these things that truly face kids. And I think all of us, and I'll shut up now, but I think all of us, the thing that we really are doing is trying to show kids that they can be active in the solution of these issues. They're not, which is another thing that was not when we were reading books when I was growing up. No, you can make a difference. It's not you have to wait till you're 18 or maybe when you're in high school and you can do some stuff. It's like right now, go ahead. And that's really, really great to read and be around.
I agree. And you all do such a great job with these books, and they do make a difference and they do inspire kids. And so thank you for that. And I think that kids are going to really relate to the three we just talked about with the family and of course the other two we mentioned and taking action. Okay, so let's switch gears just a little bit as we are talking about real things and talking about what really matters. Well, obviously something that we're dealing with is this pandemic. So I was just curious, how has it been promoting a book during the pandemic? And how has it been with your writing and your creative energy? I know some people have maybe felt more creative, some people have felt less, they've had a harder time. How has it been for each of you? And we can go around, and if somebody would like to start, they can, or I can call on people, it's up to you. Does anybody want to start? Oh, Amy will start us off, and then Dwayne, how about?
I can start because I've released now 4 books and a novella into this pandemic. So I've had almost every experience you can have at this point. I won't lie, I'm tired. I mean, there have been upsides and downsides. You know, one of the most wonderful things about releasing, you know, a book, and like it kills me that Crystal and Dwayne that you haven't got to do this yet, but you will, you know, is that the party where you get to meet the readers. And it's not about them showing up and saying, oh, you wrote a book and you're so cool. It's about getting together and loving books together. You know, I mean, it's why we love festivals like this. This is, you know, it's the energy boost that you get from being around other readers is amazing. So I have really missed that. But I have also been really aware that with all my virtual events, it has meant that a lot of people who could never have come to them have been able to. So, you know, whether they're, you know, kids who don't have someone who can bring them, or people who don't live in a major city, or, you know, don't, for whatever reason, have the ability, you know, to get in or stand in a line or do whatever. It's meant that they can all, it's really made the access so much easier. So that has been, that's been a real upside. And, you know, I've tried my best to spend more time, you know, particularly on Instagram, kind of being in conversation with my readers to sort of stick in this together. But I think in terms of the writing, and I've tried to say this as often as possible, because I think it's like, this might be the most important thing I say today, is at the beginning of all of this, I think everybody slowed down with their writing a little bit, because we're humans and we're all in shock about what was happening, and we were all, you know, afraid for people we cared about. And you'd think we would be so good at it, right? Because all a writer needs is like a pen and paper and somewhere quiet, and we were all suddenly at home. But boy, did it not work that way. And my experience was it took a little while for all the writers to start confessing to other writers, I'm not getting as much done right now. And then suddenly we all started saying it. We all realized, wait a minute, existential dread is terrible for creativity. No wonder we're having trouble. And so I've started saying it every single one of my events, because I know people who are, there are always people watching who write, and they might be writers who are just getting started or who are earlier, you know, in their writing journey, who don't have a bunch of writers they talk to. So they might not have had those conversations we all have, where we're all like, writing, hey, really hard right now. So I want you to know you're having it with us right now, that we are published, we do this for a living, and it's hard right now. So if you write as well and you're finding it really hard, I don't have a solution for you except to say you're in really good company, and it will get easier again, and just look after yourself while you're waiting for it to get easier again. So yeah, pandemic ups and downs. Let's that's my summary.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Congratulations on all those publications. It's awesome. All right, Dwayne, I think you stated that you'd like to go.
Yes. So again, similar to what Amy's saying, so I'm teaching right now during the pandemic. And, you know, I've got so many first year teachers or, you know, prospective teachers who are like, how are you doing it? What is it like? I'm so fearful. And the question, the way I answer that is, I don't know how I'm doing it, how anyone is doing it, how we're making it through. You're just existing. So I think that's kind of what it's like, you know, being a first-time author as well. I didn't know what this would be like. My introverted side is great. Like Amy said, I can go somewhere in a room, I can close the door, I can put some lo-fi instrumental beats on, and I can get to work. But the extroverted side of me is, man, I want to be in front of people. I want to be in front of kids. I want to be up I want them to be able to smell my amazing breath because my wife told me to brush my teeth this morning and now they get to smell it. Like, I want that kind of energy. I want, an 11-year-old to say, I remember when Mr. Reed came to visit my school and I smelled his breath. Like, those are the types of things that, could potentially change someone's life. So it kind of stinks that we aren't getting those opportunities. But like Amy mentioned before, I think we get opportunities to diversify, or at least I'm learning opportunities to diversify how we interact with our readers and with young people and with parents. So I am pretty active on social media, and I might have a conversation with someone from Australia whom I've never seen a day in my life because we're both excited about the book Simon B. Ryman, or we're both excited about building up our communities or advocating for those who don't feel like they have a voice. And then after having that conversation, I've made a friend. So, in closing, in the same way that, books can mend people together, is I think the same way in a lot of ways, if we're looking at silver linings, that this pandemic has mended a lot of, people who otherwise wouldn't have been together, has mended them together. So like Amy said, man, ups and downs.
So true. So true. Thank you. And thanks for what you're doing for your scholars.
One of the great things about this, and there's been so many bad things about it, is that I think Ginny is also in television. I worked in television for 25 years. And everyone in the TV side of the world looked at books as like, really, are books still a thing? And I think what this has shown us is books are the most resilient storytelling thing that we've done. The books have been strong through this. Kids have been able to travel on the page at a time when they are at home. And I just feel better than ever to be part of that community. Now, last year, like I said, I went to North Texas Teen Festival the Saturday before my book came out on Tuesday, and I was flying around the country as you do on a book tour, and I was like the surfboard ahead of the tsunami because I'm paddling, and it's like, what's that? And by the Wednesday night, I'm in St. Louis, and the NBA cancels the rest of the season all of a sudden. Thursday, and then they're like, forget Arizona, you're coming home. I'm like, okay. And so I was, I flew every day for 7 days, and now I've not seen the airport in a year. This year, this is my tour. So that's why I got up a minute ago. So what I'm having to do is figure out how to fill the days. But it used to be I had to fly each day, so it limits. So now it's like, well, okay, well, this is St. Louis, but hey, I can go to Connecticut here, and then back to St. Louis, and then, I'm in Georgia here, and I'm in California there. And that's only possible because of this. And it's incumbent on us, I think, to find ways to make this work, because we've seen kids still need the book, readers need the book still. We did I write spy books. My friend Stuart Gibbs writes spy books. My friend Beth McMullen writes spy books. And one day, out of nowhere, I just thought, well, hey, I called the International Spy Museum and I said, do you want to have an event with Beth McMullen, Stuart Gibbs, and me talking about writing spy books for kids? Doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to fly there. And like a month later, we had 800 people on a thing as we talked about that. So there are ways like this, like you said, Australia, North Carolina, Chicago, we're all over California, we're all over the place, and we can come together. That part's good, but the writing, hard. It is hard to write when you look around and you feel like,
I think
Thank
they've
you.
captured a lot of what I'm feeling. The one small thing I'll add is that in the midst of all of this, I also have a 5-year-old who started kindergarten, and he's doing virtual kindergarten, which is an absolute nightmare. And his teacher is amazing, and the school has been amazing, but it is very, very hard. And so the thing that I take away from all of it is that if I can debut now during all of this, the next and the next have got to be so much easier. So I just keep holding on to that on the days where I feel like I can't do anymore. I go, okay, if I can get through this, and if I can get through this, then the future has to be amazing. So I'm trying to hold on to that.
What's great though is that your book's not going to change. Neither is yours going. Your book is going to still. It's not like these people that made movies and now, there's no movie theaters, and what are we going to do? So it is still great that the books are going to be there.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Jenny, do you have anything to add?
Crystal, I feel your pain. I have 2 kids at home during virtual learning, and oh my goodness, it has been a full house this year. I think the ultimate irony for me is that one of the themes I explore in Line of Mars is that whoever goes to live on Mars, it's going to be an incredibly isolating experience. You know, you're not going to be able to go home. I mean, that's one of the big fears you'll hear whenever you hear an astronaut talk about going to Mars. And I heard one talk the other day. They don't know if you'll actually be able to come back because they're not sure what the effect of gravity will have on the bones and muscles of astronauts. So going to the moon is actually not that big of a deal. It's pretty close, but Mars is millions of miles away. So the health effects will be real. And a lot of people within the fields are saying it's a one-way trip. So in the book, I have it's a one-way trip. And so it's a very isolating experience. And so ironically, when I talk about it with the kids lately, they're like, I totally know what you're talking about because we're going through it right now. So we're hanging in there. I think we'll all be fine in the end. I love that the rover that just landed on Mars is called Perseverance, because I do think we're all going to persevere through all of this.
That's a nice positive note to end on. I agree on that topic. So let's switch up just a little bit. I'm going to ask one more question for you all on a little bit lighter topic here, and then we'll switch to some student questions. Were you all readers when you were young? And was there one book that made you a reader or made you a writer? Would anyone like to start? I'll give you a second to think.
I was not a reader. I was a terrible reader. I was the most reluctant reader because I was really slow, and I was just so embarrassed as kids would turn the page and I would still be, going through it. But one book, luckily I happen to have it right here. One book got through to me by the Mixed Up Files was Baisley Frankweiler, and undoubtedly it's why I like to write mysteries. It was the first. There was just something about the story that hooked me on the adventure, and I wanted to go.
Love it.
I guess I'll go. I love to read as a young person. I had siblings, but I was the youngest of 4, and so I found myself alone a lot. So I would read all the time. I love to go to the local public library, and I get stacks of books, and I just sit there and read. And in some ways, books were like my first friends. So I was absolutely a young reader. The book that stands out most in my mind as a young person is Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry by Mildred E. Taylor. That one just stands out in my mind, I think, because it was probably the first book that had a Black character as the main character that I remember really well. So as I got older, I don't think I read as much, but as a young reader right in the Middle Ages, I loved books. They were my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, I was a big reader too. I loved reading more than anything. In fact, like one of my neighbors, after I became an author, said he kind of laughed when my mom told him, because he said when I was a kid, he remembered looking out front at our lawn, and I was supposed to be out there raking leaves, and I was holding the rake with one hand with the book in the other hand, not really doing any raking. And the book that really changed my life was The Black Cauldron by Lloyd Alexander, just like an amazing fantasy book that just swept me away. I don't write fantasy, but it's the book that made me fall in love with words.
Good.
I would say that I was not a big reader. I could read well, but I was not a big reader. The only reason I even got into reading was because my brother was a big reader, and I just wanted to be better than him. So it was this friendly competition. No, you're not smarter than me. You're not going to read more books than me. What's wrong with you? But at the same time, I was a big reader because my mother would always tell me to go to sleep early, and I hated that. And I couldn't fall asleep without something playing in the background. So I had this little 9-10-inch television, black and white, and then I would put the captions or the subtitles on, and I would watch Frasier every night to fall asleep. So I was reading Frasier and all of the writing. I don't know, James, if you wrote for Frasier, or Jenny, you wrote for Frasier.
That's hilarious.
There'd be a better house behind me right now.
Yeah, I did a whole lot of reading every single night via the captions. But one book that sticks out to me, or one series that sticks out to me, you're gonna get a laugh, the Mary Kate and Ashley mystery series. We'll solve any crime by dinner time. And I absolutely loved being thrown into their world. They were heroes for me. So that was my reading way back when.
Oh, I love
love
that. I was a big reader from early on, and as early as grade 2, I am on the record as spending my lunchtime telling fanfic stories to the rest of my class. But I think I read nonstop the whole time, but the book that really got me was when I was in grade 6. My school librarian said to me that her Desert Island book was a book called The Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper. And I was totally intrigued. I was like, what is a desert island book? And she said, you know, if I was going to get shipwrecked and I could only take one book, that's the book I would take. And I thought, what kind, because I read so many books every year. I was like, what kind of book could be so good that that would be the one? And so that week was my birthday, and I got my very first ever gift token for my local indie bookstore, which is still my bookstore today. And I went down and I said, do you have The Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper? And they gave me this omnibus of all 5 books in the series, all bound up, which was coincidentally 1999. And as a grown-up, I have a suspicion it may not have been 1999, but it was that day, thanks to my local booksellers. And I've still got it. The cover's fallen off now, and I still read it every single Christmas. I still read The Dark is Rising. And my grade 6 librarian, I drop off a copy of every book I publish to her house, and she comes to my book launches as well. So she was a very special lady.
That's awesome. Thank you all for sharing that. I always love to hear. And it's interesting to hear that there are always some authors that were huge readers and then some who weren't. And I love that. And then you're all touching our readers now, and I love it.
Well,
Okay.
I think it's really interesting too. Sorry, all of us had other jobs before we became authors.
Yes. Mhm.
And, you know, like careers, not just like, oh, I'm gonna wait tables while I write books or something like that. And that's a real nice thing about this space, because I think a lot of authors truly appreciate it later than maybe if they started at 22. But
Yes.
although I think that Dwayne was like 23, but
I would say he's a babby.
Oh man.
But, okay, so let's switch a couple, where our time is going so fast, but let's switch to a couple student questions. They've got some interesting ones, and then we'll see where we are. I know, because I had so many other things to ask you, but apparently we can't stay all night. All right, so this, several students from around the area have submitted questions ahead of time for our panel. And the first one is tied to the theme of our panel, and it's for everyone. And this is Mentum from Jasper High School would like to know if you do think kids are benefiting the world positively, and do you think the next generation of kids is ready to lead?
Yes, and I hope that they come and lead as soon as humanly possible. I think they're going to be amazing at it. And I mean, look at everyone's nods. Like, we're all writing for these kids because we think they are absolutely going to be amazing leaders, and we just want to help. And then
100%. 100%. I think they're amazing. They're smarter. They have access to more. It's always the younger generations that lead. Even if you look back in history, it's always the young people that lead. So absolutely.
People ask me why I write for kids and not adults, and I'm like, I don't really care for adults that much. You know, kids, all kids are all pretty awesome, and adults are very sketchy as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and to that point, I feel like the adults, we get things wrong often. So I'd rather have a new, fresh perspective on things. And have you seen TikTok? Have you seen how creative these kids are? Like, I want that creativity in places of power. That's where I want to see that fleshed out. So yeah, man, the kids are prepared, and we just need to get out of the way.
I love it. All right, so thank you, Mentum, for that question. And our next one, still keeping with the theme, is from Jason, who goes to Lady Bird Johnson Middle School. And Jason wonders if you think books really can inspire people to take action. And was there a book that inspired you to take action to make change? Interesting question.
I sort of want to leave this to our community activist authors who
I
are,
was going to say.
who are writing, who absolutely.
I know.
I can't think of a particular book that made me want to take action, but I think absolutely that books can do that. I specifically write to put Black kids on the front of their stories and make them the heroes of their own stories. And so I think we are starting to get an ushering in of that because it's so very important because representation matters. And so I've talked to children just in the short month that my book has been out, and many of them recognize themselves in the pages already. The kids, they see themselves, they dress like them, they've got cool haircuts, and Wes, the main character in my story, is very fashionable, and they see themselves in him. And so if you can stack a book full of characteristics of real children, they'll see themselves. And I do think that inspires them. So
Yeah, I think one of the great things about books is that it allows you to see something else outside of the small town. I grew up in a very small town, and it allows you to imagine a different world. And all kids really need to be able to imagine themselves in different places. So I think that's what's amazing about writing for this age group.
There have been 4 women on the Supreme Court, and at least 3 of them that I know for sure, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Elena Kagan, and Sonia Sotomayor, all have said the first thing that made them think about pursuing a career in law and justice was Nancy Drew. So you think about something in Nancy Drew that people kind of make fun of, it's quaint and it's all in girl solving mysteries and what she's doing, but you think about the impact that those 3 women have had, not just in the Supreme Court, but on the way to get there, and it all traces back to Carolyn Keene. And yes, I think, and I have no doubt that all these books they're talking about will inspire kids. Yeah.
I love that. Okay, anything else to add on that one? Okay, this one, I'm sure you've heard before, but I'm going to ask because it is always such a popular question, and I think it's very important to many of our teens. Johnny from Jasper High School would like to know what advice you have for young aspiring writers, and what are some difficulties maybe that you faced when you started your career. We have a lot of aspiring writers, and I think they always love to hear from you and what advice you have. So if you would like to share, we would love to hear it.
Man, I say, tell your story your way. As a child, when I wanted to be a rapper like Simon, I didn't have a rapper voice, and I would always listen to other rappers. Kanye West, his voice sounds great. 50 Cent, okay, his voice sounds like from New York. I don't got a voice like that. My voice was always a little wimpy voice. But when I started to hear other rappers, like Chicago rappers like Lupe Fiasco or Chance the Rapper, and they had their voice, that made me feel like, oh no, their voice sounds a little weird. My voice sounds a little weird. I can be famous just like them. I can be impactful just like them. So as a writer, I would say, do not be afraid to write your story, like your story, your way. Who else is going to tell your story? I don't want nobody telling my story for me. I want to tell my story my way so that you get the impact told from me. So yeah, write your story your way.
Great, thank you.
I think for me, I kind of always look as a parallel to the fine arts for becoming a writer. So the way that classic artists become artists really is they study the masters. So they don't just start painting whatever they want. They copy things. They do master courses. So they'll copy other fine artists so that they get their chops as painters. And I think doing that as a writer is a great idea too. So do fan fiction. If you like a writer, write in the style of that writer. It might get you rapping with Mr. Reed, and it'll help you get your writing chops done. And eventually you will find your own voice and you'll fly away and do your own thing. But in the meantime, it'll just keep you writing.
Great advice. Thank you.
Yeah, that advice worked really well for me. I wrote fanfic for a really long time.
It's fun.
Although, like, pro tip, and this is, don't ask me how I know, do not write it on the back of your schoolwork and then give it to your friend to read and then study for the test and realize there's a giant chunk you never studied because you gave it to your friends to read instead.
Important lesson.
There's a pile of chemistry I still don't know. Probably not getting those notes back at this point.
I think it's important to remember too that writing is one of the things that really knows no boundary as to where it comes from. You know, it's what's really great about it is it doesn't take anything. It doesn't take money. It doesn't take connections. It doesn't take your family to have done it. It takes, like Blaine was saying, it takes your voice and your story, and that's really it. And you think about, you know, little city in Alabama on the same block, you have Truman Capote and Harper Lee. I mean, two amazing writers grew up side by side. Writers come from all over. I'm a big fan of voice too, and for me, the big trick is I read everything I write out loud. I think because I started in screenwriting, and I wrote so much dialogue, and that's how I would test the dialogue. And I think that leads to what Dwayne was talking about, of writing in your voice. You know, I think when we're young, like in school, when we're first starting, we think writing, we want to use our full name and our middle name and make it sound important, and we want to get our thesaurus out and try to make it sound smarter and use. But you know, write the way you talk. Write the best way that you talk. Not when you're just, you know, goofing around, but write the way that you talk, because the great thing about that is no one else can do it. That only you have that story and voice combination in you, so only you can let it out. And that's really what Glenn was saying. And it's true in a voice like the voice of a rapper, but it's true in the voice of the word choice that you use. It is the great thing about art. It is you and sharing you. And the more personal you make it, this is going to sound hard to believe, the more willing you are to write about these things, like, oh, my big head, I'm sorry, the more you connect with everyone else, you realize how universal it is. Because so many of us have similar variations of the same problems. And we connect to the words, and we become friends with people we never even met. We never meet. We meet them just on the page. How great is that?
I love that, James. Actually, and that actually touches on a point that I was just thinking about as you're talking about. If you make it very specific, people will relate to it. If you find a topic or something that you're passionate about and you tell it from your perspective, other people will get it, right? Like if you can take the thing that matters most to you and make it specific, you know, make it about your town, your place. People will eventually get it if you stack it full of personal things. I myself, sometimes you get a little bit afraid that I'm doing too much in a book. I have all these things that I want to say, and I think, oh, I've filled it with too much. And that's what's happening with my second novel that I'm editing now. But very similar to what everyone has said, it's the story I want to tell, and I want to tell it my way. And so if I can take the passion in my body and put it on the page, people will relate to it. And that's what has happened with my first novel. So that would be my advice. Take all of it, bottle it up, and figure out a way to get it out of your body on the page.
Thank you all so much for sharing. And I think our time has come to an end, sadly, but this has just been amazing. Y'all are amazing. And I feel like I could sit and talk with you all night, and I wish I could ask more, but I know our readers have enjoyed this, and I just appreciate all the great writing that you do, and hope you'll continue to put great stories out into the world for us. So thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you to all who joined us today. This has been such a treat. So all of the people who joined, be sure that you visit nttbf.com to purchase these amazing books that we talked about. And you can go to the bookshop.org link, and that way you can support these fabulous authors, and you can also support the festival. Be sure to also check out the swag shop while you were there, and visit more NTTBF panels throughout the day today and tomorrow. You'll be in for more treat, I'm sure. We appreciate your support of the festival, and we definitely hope to see everyone face to face in 2022. Thank you all so much. Read on.